Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Better Body Radio, the Better Body Radio show. Today I am joined by fellow Better Body coach, Mark Doherty. Mark, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Very, very well. Now, this topic today has came from a very recent new client that I've taken on, and I'm feeling very heated and very passionate about discussing this topic at the moment. And I'm sure over the years, you've seen quite a number of clients potentially succumb to some of the same approaches, the same outcomes. And I thought it'd be great to just have a bit of a chat. I've shared my thoughts earlier this week on our Instagram TV, our Instagram Live, but I thought I would get your point of view, given that you've taken, gazillions of clients through, different body transformations, nutrition, dieting, reverse dieting, and everything in between. And part of that, as far as a tool is concerned, and I know that you and I are both fans of this at the beginning of a client's journey, is the use of meal plans. Yeah. So I just wanted to dive into that, when meal plans are used, how they're set up, when it's appropriate, and when should you move away from meal plans. So I thought that'd be great to touch on.
Perfect.
Cool. So let's dive in. So I guess just to give people a bit of a backstory before I let Mark kind of share his thoughts, is I started with a new client this week. I've been working with another coach, achieved pretty good results, to be fair. And I think, unfortunately, though, what often happens is because that before and after transformation is put up on such a pedestal, sometimes people forget to understand that, okay, there was that transformation achieved in a way where everything else was kind of managed and it was a sustainable journey, and they were educated, and, they had a healthy relationship with food, and they were able to train well in long term. Or did it come at a cost, or all costs potentially? And so the situation that I came across with this new client was that, yes, there were certain aspects with the training, but one of the most significant things that came up is over the year of following a very rigid dieting plan with pretty much minimal deviation and no kind of food swaps, apart from literally you can swap this for this and that's it. So it was a very rigid meal plan for a year. And unfortunately, what's happened by the end of that coaching process is that she then reached out to myself, because she's at a point where she's like, well, my shoulders gubbed, I've got shin splints, I've got X, Y, and Z, and I've got an eating disorder, binge eating disorder specifically. So I think the first thing I would probably say to that would just be is that as a coach, our first duty is always to cause no harm, whether it be physically, mentally, or anything else. Whether it's to do with our nutritional practice or whether it's to do with our training, the first rule should always be do no harm. And I just think, in my point of view, and you can tell me what your thoughts are, Mark, I just think there should never get to a situation where someone develops a binge eating disorder. I think that's criminal as far as a trainer. So Mark, what's your thoughts on, first of all, the use of meal plans? And then we'll maybe pad that out into rigid versus flexible dieting later as well.
Okay, this is a long topic.
Oh dear.
So basically, I'll tell you what I do with clients. Obviously, I start with meal plans. So we send clients questionnaires. We find out what the preference of food are, what they like, what times they usually eat. So we're trying to fit their plan around their lifestyle. So we're going to give them an example meal plan, or 2 days of meal plans, 2 different meal plans, potentially, or I give one for the initial few days. What I want to do is show them that they can include foods that they prefer and enjoy. So if client likes bread, bread's in there. If client likes cheese, people say, oh, I can eat cheese. Can't believe that. Yeah, you can eat cheese and still lose weight. So my initial thing for the first week or 2 weeks is accuracy, and giving the client a certain amount of calories and establishing, is this the right and correct starting point? Meaning the sweet spot, they're not too hungry, they're not really have huge cravings, and I want to know if they're losing body fat on these calories. Now, I potentially might do that 4 or 5 days or 1 week, and they'll stay on the same plan. So they will have a certain amount of restraints on week 1 and week 2. Then what I will do next is, if I'm completely happy, then instead of moving them over to flexible dieting, which we'll talk about shortly, I will show them how they can put different options of food in the different meals. So I might give like 2 or 3 options in each meal. So then they can swap and change and have variety, and they go, oh my God, I can eat all this food and I don't have cravings and I can still lose weight. So we're trying to build up an education. And another thing I do, preferably from week 2, is I like having my clients on a deficit for initially 6 days. I like having a linear diet for 6 days. Then I have a day at the weekend maybe a Friday where I go to maintenance calories, usually maybe 14 times their body weight in pounds. So I'll give them the maintenance calories. And I will tell them, hit those calories, hit your protein, and I will get them on that day using MyFitnessPal. Because if I can teach them 1 day a week using MyFitnessPal, they know they can have a lot more flexibility and variety away from the meal plan. Then I'm initially starting that process of teaching flexible dieting. Then they go, right, Mark, on a Friday, what can I have? And I'm going, look, there's no food wrong or right. There is fitting it into your calories. Some foods have better nutrients. Doesn't matter if you want a burger, if you want some pizza, if you want ice cream, you have it. Just hit the protein, hit the calories, and fit it into your target calories. Yeah. So then it works out fantastically well. They start realizing, right, this is how I can make my own plans. And obviously, it's important for us as coaches when we're doing nutrition. We want to teach them basically, obviously, don't eat junk food all the time, or I shouldn't call them junk food. I call it like fun foods.
Or highly palatable processed foods all the time.
Yeah, that's a better word. So we have to be really careful to what way we word it, and especially for certain clients. Basically, we want them to know, look, it's as long as you can keep your nutrition 80% one ingredient food, then you can fit in 20% and your body will have optimal health, because we're not trying to just push fat loss, we're also trying to push optimal health. And from an optimal health point of view, psychological health is part of optimal health. So a client developing a bad and terrible relationship with food is definitely not what we want. Now, obviously, in the first initial weeks, we might have restriction, or more slightly restriction, or should I say restraint is a better word. And basically, it's really important to watch the client and communicate pretty much a lot to find out how is the cravings. Sometimes the client will text me or WhatsApp me and they'll say, Mark, I actually have a craving today. I'll say, try a little bit of, add some berries in, add a little bit of dark chocolate, fit it into your calories. So it's a whole educational process, because the last thing we want to do is have them binge. And if I have ever a client binge, then especially probably, obviously we've got habits and behaviors, and it takes maybe 4 to 6 weeks to start developing better habits and behaviors. So don't plan week 1 and week 2 to be perfect. They might fall off the wagon, or so they think. But if we're educating them, no food is wrong, no food is right, fit it in, then they start realizing, oh, great, I'm not actually binging. We try and get them away from the binging mentality. Now, we have certain clients that might have on a fat loss phase for 12 weeks and they might stay on a meal plan. But as I say, they might have basically lots of options. Then they know that they can take away some calories and add something in. If they do have something they want, like a bit of chocolate. So we're trying to carefully plan it. And then we have to be really careful with a client's past history in dieting. So if we got, like, as we say, this lady with binge eating, I would want to be really careful when they're at the point, the psychological breaking point, as I say, where I think, right, let's take them back from dieting and start adding a diet break for a week. Or a female's time a month, their cravings are really high. So instead of them binging, put a diet break. And so strategically putting in diet breaks is really effective. Now, long term, fat loss is only part of the puzzle. What we're trying to do is get rid of the body fat where they're in a happy place. We're trying to refresh up their food, bring them back to maintenance calories, and bring them to an optimal point. What was I going to say? Bring them to an optimal point, and then they're at higher calories, they're lower body fat, they're happy, they can fit in, they can do flexible dieting. So we're trying to teach flexible dieting, because what we're really interested in is long term, not just weight loss, but weight management, which people forget. People try and think about, oh, let's do fat loss, and then that's it. Once we get our goal of fat loss, that's us finished. No, it's not. That's only half the battle, and that's half the puzzle. And if we lose a client at that point, then that's not successful. Well, for me, what is successful? Get a client down over how many months it takes, refresh them up to maintenance, have them have a good amazing relationship with food, where they enjoy it, they can put on what they want, and they're running around, they got great sleep, low stress, performance good, tick all the boxes that they need to, then that's what I class as a successful transformation, not this before and after quota, 12-week quota. That's not good. And then if I have a client who's been working with me for 3, 4, 5, 6 months or even longer, then I definitely want them to be in a good place with having a healthy relationship with food, definitely.
Awesome. I think that is a fantastic summary of what we'd look at in terms of putting in a meal plan. I think just to summarize Mark's points, meal plans are not necessarily good or bad. They're not something that you ideally follow for the exact same day in, day out for long periods of time. They are a fantastic tool for clients in the beginning of a fat loss journey. They can even be implemented for a bit longer with flexibility added in, and very much be used as a bridging stone between having a bit more of a meal plan approach and having more of a flexible dieting approach. So I think that sums up really nicely, and move us on to potentially the drawbacks of, say, rigid dieting versus flexible dieting. So first of all, Mark, let's just explain to the guys what is rigid dieting, and then we'll move on to what we would define as flexible dieting.
Okay, so rigid dieting is like sticking to the same foods and what the class is clean eating. Basically, it's like a chicken and broccoli type diet. And there's no flexibility, meaning you're stuck with the same foods every day, and you think there's good foods, you think there's bad foods, and
you cannot deviate from the plan. Heaven forbid.
That's an amazing word, deviate. You can't deviate from it, or else things go wrong, which is absolute BS. Then we've got flexible dieting. Now I'll just go a little bit into flexible dieting, because flexible dieting thinks people's just swapping food over for that. Flexible dieting is a number of things. It is number one, having 80% one ingredient foods, 20% the fun foods. It's number two, one day you might have higher carbs, lower fat. Next day you might have lower carbs, higher fat. Keep them within your calories. Number three, it's learning, also getting away and learning mindful eating, intuitive eating. What if you can't follow something that day? Eat until you're satisfied. So there's a lot more. One day you might have 3, 4 meals. Next day you might have 5 meals. So basically, long-term weight management for flexible dieting there's just so much to it. But if you are on a fat loss plan and you're looking at flexible dieting, you might have a certain amount of meals, you might have a certain amount of calories. The trick is to hit the calories, hit the protein, hit 80% one ingredient foods, 20% the fun foods, and just put it in what you want and what you prefer. And I do it all the time, and it works fantastically well. Now, the most important thing is scientific studies show that rigid dieting, and as you talked about, this lady has developed binge eating. Rigid dieting has been shown to create terrible relationship with foods and also push people over the edge to the point of eating disorders. Yep. Whereas flexible dieting is scientifically showing to have better long-term weight management, healthy relationships with food. And for me, a very, very important part is the coaching and how we coach our clients and how we communicate to our clients. So, and then it's important to establish as well that we're talking here about general population clients. Now, prep clients can do it, but that's a story for another day. I think we'll just keep this to general population for now.
Yeah, ideal. So I think that one of the key things you touched on there is, I think, if it fits your macros became very popular in the early 2000s, right? And like you rightly said, I think a lot of people just thought of, well, I can just eat as much of X as I want as long as it fits my calories. But I think, like you said, it's not really quite as simple as that. There's a lot of flexible dieting is a very multifactorial approach. There's a lot of things we have to consider, and it's things like training and output. It's like, for example, for females, their physiology. It's things like, okay, well, sure, I want to fit in some foods I enjoy, but am I hitting my protein target? Am I getting good quality sources of food? Are you getting enough micronutrition, eating enough plant-based foods in order to cover health? Am I keeping on top of things? Okay, well, the way I'm setting up my diet, does that allow me to digest and assimilate the foods I eat? Does that allow me to enjoy a social life, if that's the relevant thing? Or if I'm going through a bit more of a focus phase of training, do I have just enough flexibility within that particular context at that particular time to not feel like I've got all these unnecessary restraints of food rules? And like you said, Mark, as well, though, the chances are if someone is at a certain mindset and they're really dialed in to get a result, it's a huge difference between if you say, right, you cannot have this versus, well, you could fit that in. What I often find with those clients, especially as they're getting to the end and they want to see those results really pop, they don't want to have those foods. But if you told them you cannot have that, they probably want it, because you now impose this unnecessary rule. And then, of course, when you can't have something, it makes you want it more, right? And it's that kind of psychology. So I think it's just important that you never say, like, you know, I think Mark McDonald said it best, is when all foods are on plan, you can never be off plan. But that doesn't mean that there's not a time where you might have to dial it in a bit tighter. And I think the way I think Mal and I spoke about this the other week, and I actually spoke to this girl about this in terms of how we all work as coaches, is we never say any food's off plan. But it's just understanding where it fits in that context, in that moment in time. And so it might be that, okay, you've used to having a lot of, say, for example, bread every single day, bagels, etc. But then as you get deeper into a fat loss phase, that's very energy expensive food. You might, for a very short period of time, take that out. But the idea should be is that all of the habits and the behaviors you've laid down during that initial fat loss phase, those are still the same base behaviors and habits that you rest on when you're back up towards maintenance again. It's just that the difference is at maintenance is that you can add a bit more of the other stuff on top. I think people often forget that, and that you rightly said earlier, it's not just about achieving that before and after photo, it's about the after stuff as well. And are the habits, you know, is there a cognitive dissonance between, right, I identify as this person and I'm now here, but the behaviors haven't really moved along to meet that. And unless we look longer term, it's not going to be enough time for the behaviors to catch up with who you now are as a person, because your identity does change, and that's okay. That's meant to happen. So yeah, I think that flexible dieting is not just simply I can have donuts all day every day. It's cover your bases, but you know, you can have a lot more of a fun kind of inclusion of foods, as well as, like you say, like, where does that apply to every other aspect of your life, not just I go to the gym, I'm in a calorie deficit, and that's who I am. It's not really what it's all about.
Yeah.
Cool. Any closing thoughts, Mark, on that before we sign off?
No, I just think, like, I feel the fitness industry need to, number one, as we always talk about development, number one is, like, get on a really good nutrition course. Like, probably MAC nutrition is gold standard for me, definitely. Yeah, so, and then we talk about the injuries, biomechanics, and even stuff I've been doing this 27 years, and I've got to, like, just from teaming up with you guys, my passion is back for, like, being the best I can be, and this is the way it should be with every personal trainer. For example, and I'm off tangent here, but the other day I was sitting with my client, friend, doctor, who was on his laptop, and I go, "What are you doing?" "I'm studying." He has to get more points so he can get his license renewed. Same with the fitness industry, it needs to step it up 10 years, definitely. Yeah, so, and at the end of the day, the most important thing, it's not just about fat loss, the most important thing is optimal health.
Definitely. And I think if we can almost champion and lead the way of, we can still achieve fantastic results with clients, but we can do it in a very health first type of approach, then I think we'd all be, as an industry, moving in the right direction, especially with the current climate and everyone placing a lot more emphasis on their health now. So I think understanding what's within our scope, how we can best help people and serve those that we work with, so that, like you say, we're not just achieving this pinnacle before and after photo, we're also really improving the overall quality of life of everyone we come into contact with. So key.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. Well, I think that's a nice, short, sharp, to the point episode. Thanks very much for your time, Mark. For everyone else, the best way you can possibly support us at this point in time and support the podcast as we grow and as we get more listeners is to go on and leave us a 5-star review on your preferred podcast platform. Check us out on YouTube. We are posting these podcasts on YouTube to watch as well. And outside of that, you can obviously connect with us on @BetterBodyCollective on Instagram as well. And you'll find all of us on there. And if you are interested in working with us or finding out more about what we do, just click the link in our bio and you'll find plenty of resources and ways that you can find out more about what it is exactly we do. Mark, thanks again.
All right. Thank you.